Welcome to another edition of Moving the Goalposts, the Summer of Jeff B's edition. We're going to be doing quarterback fades, quarterback targets. We're going to be probing our special guest. We got a sharp one. We'll be with you in a second right after right now. Producer, hit that button. On the last episode of the Dynasty Pulse, we had special guest Jeff Bell to talk to us about wide receiver, breakouts, and fades. Today, we introduce another special guest, another Jeff B from the Footballguys. But first, thank you for joining Dynasty Pulse once again, right here on Fantasy Sports Advice Network. We got Greinberg in the house, Chev is in the building, and Mad Dog is down there, and I am Biggs. How are you guys doing? Feels like a whole week since we last talked to you.
We're moving goalposts and taking names because that's what we do here on the show. And we got a special guest tonight from the Footballguys, like you mentioned, Jeff Blaylock. So let's get him on stage. Let's do it.
Yo! Yeah, brother. Yo, Sleepy, what's up, homie? You know my cousin, Sad Boy.
I think you got the wrong guy, Holmes.
Oh, that's man, you're Sleepy. Everyone's saying the body of Sleepy, he like the Mexican Wolverine and my partner here, he want to see the product.
When he talking?
My name is Jeff. It's Jefe, man.
Jeff Blaylock is one of the sharpest strategic minds in Dynasty fantasy football, known across the industry as the real Jeff B from Footballguys, and is the host of the Dynasty Compass podcast. Jeff brings more than a decade of winning Dynasty experience, clear process-driven analysis, and a focus on long-term roster building that managers trust. His work at Footballguys and on Dynasty Compass consistently delivers actionable strategy, thoughtful rankings, and the kind of big picture thinking that helps teams stay ahead of the market. We're fired up to have Jeff on the show. Welcome, Mr. Blaylock. How are you?
I'm great, guys. Thanks so much for having me. I realize I'm coming in after Jeff Bell, so hopefully I am not going to pale in his great shadow.
That was last week.
Oh, it was last week. All right. Very good. So
You're
everyone's already forgotten.
You're wearing your hat proud. I met you at the expo personally. I had a great time meeting you, having a lot of great conversations, and you certainly deliver the Footballguys mantra proudly. And, we're excited to have you on our show. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on the Footballguys and what you do for them.
No, Biggs, your intro did all the heavy lifting for me. So I will just say that I do my Dynasty rankings, other Dynasty and season-long content there. All my written content is exclusively there. Very proud of a feature I think we're going to bring back this year, Dynasty Waivers of the Future. We focus on deeper leagues and try to find guys who will be very popular on your waiver wires in 3 or 4 weeks. Last year, we got guys like Parker Washington, Jake Tonjes, Bam Knight, Cameron Johnson, and Kevontae Turpin before they became waiver wire darlings. So if you got them when we said so, you paid very, very little for them. You can also find me haunting our Discord communities, answering questions, and sometimes on one of our shows. And as you guys said, Dynasty Compass is my podcast. Episode 50 is just recorded this week. I get some of the best minds in Dynasty to provide their insights on strategy, theory, roster construction, and mindset. We try to actually take that compass, which is our central metaphor, to heart. We want to teach you how to navigate. And you learn to navigate with a compass, you get somewhere with a GPS, and we are a compass. And with that, guys, I am all yours.
Well, before we get started, I just have a quick question for you. Is Eric McAllister going to sign with anybody? Please?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I'm a TCU guy, so, I go Frogs, but, I'm a Jack Besh stan. I mean, I'm Quentin Johnson. I'm a defender of his ejecto mitt hands. We're gonna get through this. So I hope somebody sees fit to give Eric a shot.
Raiders fan here, and I interviewed Jack Besh, and it was one of the greatest days of my life. And
Great
that
dude.
was Senior Bowl before they even drafted him. So
Yeah,
he was super nice.
Love it. All right, boys and girls, we're ready to get into this, and we got a esteemed guest, and I don't think he's been probed yet, so it's time for the probing. We are talking Dynasty quarterback landscape, and we're going to get into this with my question. And I'm going to talk to you about third-year quarterbacks currently bunched in the same dynasty range. I'm talking Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, and Caleb Williams. Drake Maye finished 2024 as roughly the quarterback 23, depending on the format, 2,300 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, added some on the ground, 421 yards, but didn't start right out of the gate. But then he exploded in 2025. We know finished as the quarterback 2 through 17 games. Jayden Daniels, what was he doing at this time last year? Well, he was literally in the same spot that Drake Maye was in Dynasty. So the standout rookie 2024, 3,500 yards, 25 passing touchdowns, and a jaw-dropping 900 rushing yards and 6 scores. Good for the QB5 and offensive rookie of the year. And now comes in Caleb Williams. He was solid, but not spectacular as a rookie. 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns in year 2 under Ben Johnson. Finished as the QB6, 4,000 yards, roughly 27 touchdowns, and almost 400 rushing yards. The completion percentage still a work in progress, but like I mentioned earlier, Jeff, this time last year, Daniels was clearly the consensus leader of the group. Now Maye has the highest recent ceiling, and Caleb has been ascending in the new Ben Johnson's offense. So do you have a clear front runner among these three heading into 2026? And how are you treating them in one tier maybe, or do you have one right now as your go-getter, and who is going to be leading that group in 2026?
I have them all in the same top tier. I've got 6 guys in that tier, with Drake Maye being my QB1, Daniels is my QB3, and Caleb Williams is my QB5. I've got Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and those gaps, and Lamar Jackson rounding out that tier. And in my mind, you really can't go wrong with any of those guys as foundational pieces to a dynasty team. Maye gets the nod for me out of that group, because I think he could be a starting quarterback in the NFL on successful teams for 18 to 20 something years. He may not be a QB1 that entire time, but if we're talking a super flex format and that's one of your quarterbacks, you are locked up for that for a decade or more. You don't have to deal with that position again. So if you can get hold of any of those guys, I think you're golden. In a few leagues, I actually have Maye and Allen, so I'm feeling really good in those. I got 2 of those guys going in. Who I think will have the best 2026. So I think Allen actually will, but he wasn't in part of the question. So we're going to go with Drake Maye and just the situation that they have there in New England, that they really need him to be the focal point of that offense and drive that. You say he's got a really smart coordinator himself in McDaniels. And I'm expecting him to be at the top. I think Caleb Williams will be kind of right behind him. I see another step forward for him in Ben Johnson's offense. And then Jayden Daniels really is going to be kind of a function of, can the Commanders get that offensive line and that running game going? Because if they can't, then Daniels is going to have a little bit of difficulty keeping up with them being the other 2 guys that we were talking about.
Yeah, the steps forward that, the Ben Johnson, them bringing in the Patriots, A.J. Brown, only adding weapons. And, the Stephon Diggs signing, I think, does a lot for the Commanders as well to make them a little bit more functional. But you mentioned a really big void there, and that's that offensive line. And, Jayden Daniels is, that was some of the question marks headed in, is his slight frame, and can he hold up to that? And if they're going to design runs for him. So, yeah, I think I'm with you in lockstep here. Anybody got that different, like Maye, Caleb, and then Jayden in a different range?
Well, the elephant in the room is just that people figure out Cliff Kingsbury stuff after 1 year. So I think David Blau coming in, being off the Detroit tree. Well, not necessarily being off the Detroit tree, but playing under Ben Johnson. I think that could bring a new element, just an element to his growth as a quarterback, and he could take the step forward that we wanted to see from Maye. He had a higher scramble rate, as you know, had a higher scramble rate. Goodness, I can't get words out. I'm nervous because Jeff Blaylock's here, but he had a higher scramble rate in 2025 than he did in 2024. And I think Josh Connerly, the right tackle that they took in the first round, is probably going to have a little bit better of a year. Laramie Tunsil's a stud. We don't have to spend any time there. Losing Tyler Biotish, though, is going to be, that's the biggest question point on which direction this team goes. So I think it could be neck and neck, but I do think that Drake Maye could finish the job and win MVP this year, especially with AJ Brown. We might be in line for the one thing that I've asked for the last 6 years, which is 160 targets for AJ Brown, just for a second, just to see how it feels. So I kind of want to just, I'm having some aggressive visions about that. So I can't disagree with you, but I do think that Jayden Daniels has become a little undervalued based on what we know he can do, and having an offensive coordinator that's not just booking flights to Thailand in the coordinator box. So I just going to throw that out there, that it's a possibility, not a probability. It's a possibility that it could be better than what we're giving it credit for, especially after having to suffer through surviving Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah. So for me, like, I think I would have Jayden Daniels third out of the three quarterbacks that we talked about, simply because fragility was an issue that we worried about coming into the league. You see when he's on a run, it's not designed runs like you might see with an Allen or a Lamar, even though they can be chaotic. I think Caleb Williams, he was my flag plant this year. I really think that we saw Ben Johnson kind of tear him down from his reckless college years, and now you're going to see him build up. He has Luther Burden, he has Colson Loveland. That team has established the run. Like, I think we're going to see a more poised Caleb Williams, and I think he can be in a higher or finish higher than we can see Drake Maye finish this year.
All right. Love the calls, boys. Mm-hmm. All right, Chev, you got a question for our guest.
Short and sweet. Also, great meeting you at the expo this past weekend. I wanted to make it a point.
Excellent.
I wanted to make it a point to get over and talk to you. But it's real simple here. I've got a season-long ticket with Brock Purdy to lead the league in touchdowns, and I've also got a plus one, or I think it's plus 2,000 for him to win MVP this year. Now, let's pretend like the substation isn't going to ruin all this.
It's early yet.
Let's pretend like the substation is not going to ruin all this. Change my mind. Why am I off my rocker about him leading the league in touchdowns and or winning MVP?
I don't think that you're off your rocker, but it does sort of require that receiving core to hold itself together in some form or fashion. And we've already lost Pearsall for the season. And I don't know who all they had out there in practice on the day that we're recording this. So I'm not following the Niners camp for football guys, but was that?
I checked. Okay. So Deshaun Stribling returned to practice. Good. Still no Mike Evans, still no Christian Kirk, but Mike Evans is 37 years old or however old he is. So he doesn't need training camp anymore. Right. It's just, I'm Big Mike. I go out there, I score touchdowns. So this is also a bet on Mike Evans to score 10 more touchdowns this year. But go ahead. All right.
Yeah, no, I think it's right there. And I think for Purdy to have those kind of numbers, it's going to need to be more passes to Christian McCaffrey than McCaffrey running for touchdowns, which, I think McCaffrey managers would be fine with that either way, because a touchdown is a touchdown no matter how it comes in. But it counts better for Purdy if it's a pass rather than a handoff, even if it's a little pop pass or something. So, I think plus 2,000 is about right in terms of the odds on that, rather. I mean, it is a bit of a contrarian play to some of these more popular guys, but honestly, that's how you win some things sometimes, including dynasty leagues, but also if you're in DFS or best ball or some of these other season long leagues, you don't win it by playing the chalk. And, Maye, Daniels, Caleb are chalk. So I think Purdy is probably, in my mind, the best non-chalk play that I would make, because that dude knows what he's doing out there. And, whether he has receivers or not, he's got to make plays to get whoever's out there the ball. And so I'm not mad at it at all. I don't, I think it's longer odds than some of these other guys, but man, it's a good non-chalk call.
Biggs, you're a big Purdy guy. You must like this.
Yeah, I love Brock Purdy. Highly efficient. One of the top 3 fantasy points per dropback quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Super high EPA per play. Knows the offense. You can call him a system quarterback, but it's Kyle Shanahan's system. So how is that a drawback? You know what I mean?
Love it.
Now, the fact that Mike Evans is dealing with soft tissue injury already, and he's staring down the barrel of Jake Tonjes, Jordan Watkins, maybe Jacob Cowing. That isn't exactly a heralded receiving core, but they'll make do.
You got a question for our guest? What is it, Biggs?
Well, it's more of a request than a question. So with scientific method, you come up with a hypothesis, and then you throw absolutely everything that you can to shoot that hypothesis down. And when you haven't been able to do that at the end, then you have a theory. And so I have been super high on Jaxson Dart, more specifically with Jaxson Dart, his ability to run the ball and his intent to run the ball. We saw that he had one of the lowest rates of throwing the ball outside of the pocket last year. It was right around 10%, because he doesn't plan on throwing on the run. He plans on running and putting his head through somebody's chest. So he played in 11 games last year where he logged over 14 pass attempts and 3 rushes. Those were all games that he wasn't hurt. And in those games, he averaged over 25 fantasy points per game, which was second in the NFL behind Josh Allen. Now, you'll hear a lot of analysts say you can't look at the entirety of the season. You have to look at the fantasy points per game. So that's what I did. Josh Allen scored about 26 fantasy points per game last year. Talk me out of Dart not having a path to QB2, if not QB1.
Yeah, I'm a fantasy points per game guy myself. I think you got to take out the injuries and just the wobbles that you see from season to season. So the way to really understand it is what's the potential. And when I think about Dynasty and I think about rankings and I think about player evaluations, I think about it in terms of what is their potential, not necessarily predicting how many games they're going to play, but when they are out there for me, when they are in my lineup, what am I looking for from them? Jaxson Dart. I mean, I took over an orphan this spring, and I didn't realize how bad this orphan was when I took it over. I may be rebuilding this thing until 2036. It's super flex, and my quarterbacks are Dart, Dylan Gabriel, Teddy Bridgewater, and Kyle Allen. So knowing Dart's propensity to get himself clobbered, there's a really good chance I'll have no quarterbacks for stretches of this season. And so I worry about that discretion a little bit from Dart. And I think that to me is the biggest reason why, he won't reach the very top of the QB leaderboard in terms of overall points. But I think he's definitely in play for it in terms of points per game. He's got, he's going to have to drive a fair amount of this offense. A lot of it's going to go through him. We don't know how long Ken Scatterbo will be able to play. If he can't stick any more landings on his backflips, it may be very, very short. But I think both he and Dart kind of this high risk, high reward. They're both reckless. But they are fantasy gold when they are out there. Dart, the other sort of thing for me is his deep accuracy is not great. And Biggs, you've already hit it. He's got kind of happy feet in the pocket and out of it. Once he abandons the pocket, the ball's not going anywhere. He's going to hold on to it. All of that kind of stuff's fixable, though. I mean, footwork, a willingness to slide instead of trying to take on a linebacker or a defensive back head on. All that sort of stuff is fixable. What may not be is just the fragility of the offense around him. I mean, Malik Neighbors, maybe just a fraction of himself all season, maybe a very great fraction, and maybe 80-85%, but still not necessarily 100, depending on how his soft tissue injury recovery is going. Scatterbo, we've already mentioned, he's kind of the angry bowling ball that will knock over anything in his way until he can't do that anymore. Wan'Dale Robinson is now a Titan. There's no real answer to me at wide receiver 2. Some combination of, Slayton, Mooney, Calvin Austin, Malachi Fields, the ghost of Odell Beckham Jr., and the ghost of Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, that's just like truly the who's who of who's available when it comes to the wide receiver 2 is. And then, Matt Nagy, he's been hit or miss as an offensive coordinator, and he can be a hit here. So I think that there's a lot working against Dart for QB1 or QB2 overall in fantasy this year. But I can see it. There is that sort of pathway there. If these things line up, if this offense can move, if Nagy can actually put this together, if they can stay healthy, if Neighbors can come back, that's a lot of ifs I'm stringing together.
Right.
But they're also the sort of ifs that as a dynasty guy, I kind of want to have in play because I want people to be healthy. I want to see this productivity. I want to see their potential realized. And that per game kind of point total when Dart's playing is going to be very high. So the path's there as it was for Purdy to be up there too. I mean, there's ways to get there.
Right.
And it doesn't involve other people being injured.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to see him slide more. I do want to see him run out of bounds and not take people head on. I don't want him to stop running. I want him to run just at the rate that he does. Because that's golden fantasy. Cam Scattaboo, a local guy, he grew up 20 miles from me. And I really want to see a big second half out of Malachi Fields. I feel like if he can establish himself as a downfield threat, the way he kind of jumped up at Notre Dame, I don't care if he's an older prospect. If he can put that together, yes, Dart has problems with the deep ball, especially on the left-hand side and in the middle. But if he can put something together with Malachi Fields, I don't expect Jaxson Dart to finish as QB2. If he's somewhere solidly in QB12, I will be very, very happy. Aside, I am on the board in the college football fantasy legends league. Froton's in it. John Lobb's in it. I'm getting sniped on either side by John Lobb and my boy Rhino. I'm on the clock. I'm trying to build 4 running backs out. I'm in round 3. In my queue, I have Cameron Dickey, Joe Jackson, and Jeremy Payne. Who am I taking? We're talking Big 12 running backs.
Yeah.
You're a Big 12 guy.
How far removed are you from Caleb Hawkins being available?
There it is.
Like
It's an 18-team league, so I'm.
Oh, he's gone. He's gone.
Gone. Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure.
He's gone. I'm leaning Dickey. He's the top of my queue. But your thoughts on Payne? And you get to see Joe Jackson every year, so.
I do. I have to admit that my college scouting is for pro purposes. It has not begun. So I don't have much of an opinion on this one. I will yield the floor. Thank you very much. I'll be here all week.
I love it. I love the honesty.
I appreciate you. I took Dickey, and I'm hoping that Jeremy Payne comes back around. I'm only 5 picks away, so if I can double up.
My advice to drafters is go with your gut. If you're not sure, go with your gut. The guy on the top of your queue is the guy to go with. So there you go.
All right, Mad Dog, you got a question.
So, Jeff, I think I could ask you a question that's more in your wheelhouse like mine, because the question that Biggs asked, I had the same reaction as you. So this can kind of be a too long didn't read here, but I'd love to hear your QB strategy in startups and how you position yourself in current leagues. Do you prefer to lock up the positions with 2 elites in the first few rounds, or you find punting the position? I kind of see that QB has seen a resurgence in the late round quarterback, or people fade until the middle rounds of startups. So let's hear what you kind of do with startups and orphans or current leagues that you have.
Well, let me just address one QB just real quickly. I generally wait there because, I mean, there is some sufficient depth now in the position that I can usually get away with that for quite a while. And there may even be, if I need a starter on the waiver wire, there might actually be one if I need a spot starter here or there. I will say, though, if I have an opportunity to build a mini stack with a running back one or a wide receiver one, I might do that. I just did that this week. Albeit in a redraft league, but same idea. I took A.J. Brown in the second round and took Drake Maye in the 4th as the third quarterback off the board in that particular league. I do like the idea of stacking. I realize that's a best ball thing, not necessarily what we preach in redraft or dynasty, but I like the multiplier, the force multiplier effect that gives me. So if I have that opportunity, that will move that particular quarterback higher on my board in 1 QB, and I might take him earlier than I might otherwise. In Superflex, I got to land at least one elite quarterback if I can. One of those 6 guys I mentioned at the top of the show, and I'm willing to wait on QB2. I like to add other elite assets though if I'm going to punt on QB2. So if I don't have a top 6 wide receiver, top 6 running back, top 3 tight end still hanging around, then I'll go ahead and pick up that second quarterback there. I have tried punting it before. It's really difficult to draft or trade franchise quarterbacks if you don't get them at startup. And that's another league that I'll be rebuilding until about the year 2030, unless I somehow magically hit on all my picks next year, which might work. I know I've done it before, but it's not a strategy to say, I'll just wait until my 2 first rounders come around next year and I'll get my 2 franchise quarterbacks and be set for 15 years. It doesn't really work that way. But I will say, though, that with the depth that we have at quarterback, that resurgence in the position as you're talking about, I think a hero QB strategy works right now in terms of a startup, which is get your top guy, and then you've got the one that you have. Your QB1 is locked up, preferably for 10 to 12 years, at least 5 or 6, and then that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of who to take next. And you can take a QB2. It's not as hard to draft one really good quarterback over the course of the next several years as it is to draft 2. And so I think a hero QB strategy works. But I don't want to leave round 2 of a super flex draft without at least one quarterback.
Yeah, love it. I'm on the same page as you there.
Yeah. So what you're saying is go out and get your guy, Fernando Mendoza, right away. And then ride to the end. Well, with that cue.
We're talking rookie drafts now, right?
Yeah. Let's get into our fade category. Great roundtable there. Jeff answered the questions really well. So let's get into the fades. And you and Mad Dog are in unison here. So let you talk about. Hey. Okay, and Biggs. Everybody is up against my guy, and I'm gonna fight.
No, I'm not. I'm with you. I'm not standing for this nonsense, Mike.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Let's go. All right, Jeff. Talk to us about how you're fading Nando.
This is another thing about going this per game thing. I didn't actually answer all of your questions very well. I answered all of the questions that I answered very well, and I just didn't answer the other ones. So that's how I keep my average up.
Yeah, me too.
That's a high rate return.
Yeah. At least I was honest. Anyway, Mendoza is my fade for quarterbacks. He's my QB 20, which is the top of my 4th tier of dynasty quarterbacks. I'm 4 below Footballguys consensus there. On the plus side, he's got elite processing capability. He's a very solid leader. He's a great locker room guy. He's pretty accurate throwing as long as he's in a clean pocket, but he's not the best under pressure. And while Las Vegas has invested in its own line, in its offensive line, rather, it's still average at best overall, maybe. And it's near the bottom in terms of pass blocking, and it's not very deep. So it can't really afford any injuries up front there. And that rating of near the bottom in pass blocking is from my Footballguys colleague, Matt Batanti. I don't do the ratings on our offensive lines. And also Mendoza, I think, takes too many chances in the red zone. He's a little reckless there. I think he tries to force things just because the windows are so much tighter than they are on the rest of the field. Another thing I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen, and we'll see what gives here, is it's quite an adjustment to take snaps under center if you've been a shotgun guy. And I think Mendoza could probably count on one hand the number of under center snaps he took in college. I see one hand held up with 5. Yep. I remember it being a very, very low number. Clint Kubiak likes under center plays. It's a very heavy part of his offense, along with heavy 12 and 21 personnel usage, and 12 and 21 usually isn't run from the shotgun. So, it's not to say that it won't work, because, Sam Darnold still took about 60% of his snaps from the shotgun with Kubiak the last time they were together. So I think it'll still work, but that's still going to be an adjustment that has to be made. So there's a long way around of saying I think he's got a decent QB2 floor. I don't expect him to be much of a runner. I get that his running ability is a bit masked and underrated. And we'll see what happens inside the 10, if it's going to be Mendoza or if it's going to be Janty or whichever change of pace back they might have. And then the other issue is just, can the Raiders bring in some receiving talent? I mean, Trey Tucker, Jalen Naylor, they're among the weakest wide receiver 1-2 combos in the league. Maybe Miami's of Malik Washington and somebody is worse. Bowers basically is the wide receiver 1 there. So to me, that's lower volume passing, a little more running. And then he may get his red shirt year too, which I think actually is probably a good thing for him. But if you're looking for help this year, he's probably not the guy.
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of these sentiments. Like I think like he was pushed up because of his weak draft class. We knew for years that this 2026 class was going to be weak. I don't think that Mendoza really has a lot of elite talents. He's not a Konami code quarterback. He's more of a statue build for me. I think he was very sheltered at Indiana, like 5 snaps under center in his whole college career, 23 passes a game. Like, how are we going to expect to have elite assets like Brock Bowers produce for us if this number isn't doubled? And can he do that under Kubiak's system? I think the redshirt year is going to be beneficial for him, but where do we really see him? Like, I kind of think at QB 16, when you look on Dynasty Data Lab, like that is kind of his ceiling already for me. I don't see that he's going to get any higher when he's going around players like Tucker Kraft, Zay Flowers, Jordan Tyson. He's ahead of Cam Ward, ahead of Baker Mayfield. Like, I don't think that happens for long. If Cam Ward comes out and smashes, he immediately vaults over Fernando Mendoza. I just don't see a pathway to Mendoza being scoring close to a QB1, even with Bowers and Genty there. I just think it's going to be a very hard transition for him in the NFL.
All right. I've been waiting, brushing my hands together, because this is my guy, guys. And, same breath, people were talking about Tom Brady in the same way. Doesn't have the talent, doesn't have anything going for him. And then he gets this incredible coach, and he's an incredible leader. And then the next thing you know, he's leading teams to Super Bowls. And this is my guy. I think he's never going to be a top-tier QB1 in fantasy, but I see him as a real winner, a true student of the game who can lead the Raiders to a Super Bowl one day under Clint Kubiak. And the tape shows he's a pro's pro, calm, accurate, processes at an elite level, and wins with toughness and preparation rather than pure arm talent. Once he takes over, Mendoza profiles as a high-end QB2 with legitimate QB1 spike weeks for years, maybe even decades plus. And Jeff, you mentioned it earlier, you like that stability in a quarterback where you can have him for years, maybe not the QB1 every week, but this guy is a winner. He's proven it. 16-0 season, a national championship under pressure, playing in games where everything is on the line. I mean, it reminds me so much of Tom Brady. And I just think that, this is a comparison, and maybe I'm over my skis here, but I see this with Clint Kubiak. And I told Biggs that I think the Raiders are in line for a Super Bowl in the next 5 years because of Mendoza and Kubiak. And I'm sticking to my guns here. So I think that he's a guy that maybe this year is a fade for sure, because, they're going to want to take the slow roll with them. And I'm happy they're going to do that because, these quarterbacks don't get that opportunity to sit behind a veteran and learn the systems. And I think that this is going to be really good for him. So yeah, give me some Fernando Mendoza. Chev, what do you think?
Well.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Well, I think there's two.
I raised my hand even.
Listen, here's the deal. Had he been drafted to like the Arizona Cardinals, who have shown you that they don't really have a plan to do anything cool with anybody ever, then I would be a little bit more trepidatious about this. But this is a perfect setup. Everything that you guys alluded to is something that he has a chance to sit back and get comfortable with. And be brought along much in the way that a guy like Drake Maye was brought along, much in the way that a lot of young quarterbacks get brought along to where, hey, we're not going to start you. We're not going to throw you out there. We're not going to throw you to the wolves. We're going to give you some time to acclimate. We're going to let you get into the environment. And if Big Kirko does a good enough job, then he gets a red shirt year, and you get Kirk Cousins, you get Kirko Chains, and you get Salsa Kirko Chains. So they're the same human being. It's just one is 15 years older than the other one. And on top of that, I think that we're a year away from the Raiders as an organization kind of taking a step forward. If they're going to win games in some sort of way this year, it's going to be because they run the ball over 500 times and they just lean on Ashton Genty to take that step forward as a Kubiak back. And then, JS, we had Ian on the show last week or whenever, I don't know what the time is, a flat circle, but he talks about the Super Bowers strategy, and I think that Bowers is in line for another 150 plus targets again. So you have these easy buttons built in where you could just throw the ball to football robot Brock Bowers, or you could throw it to Ashton Genty, or you could just decide which receiver you're going to throw it to. But I think that this is the perfect environment, the incubator that could lead to fantasy superstardom for a guy who, honestly, profiles very closely to Jared Goff. You talked about his statuesque nature in the pocket. If they add one more weapon to this whole deal with the 2027 class being loaded at the wide receiver position, then this outlook could change very quickly. And I know sometimes it's hard to see it until it's done, but I do feel like he could be a guy that consistently gives you 4,000 and over 30 touchdowns. And we've seen Sam Darnold in this system do very well. We've seen Derek Carr play competent football before everyone around him just was felled by injury the first 2 weeks of the 2024 season. So I don't understand why the descent on Fernando Mendoza and then making the proclamation that his ceiling isn't very high when we have several guys that we could look at their side stylistically that are very similar to him, and they're producing for fantasy. So he's not going to be given up on. He's in just the quantum of ball knowledge with the greatest quarterback of all time as an owner who's laid out the plan, the blueprint for how to make him be a successful quarterback. Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Biggs is ready. Now you get your chance, Biggs. Go ahead.
I am a Northern California native. I'm a big, huge fan of the California Golden Bears. I watched Fernando Mendoza's freshman and sophomore seasons at Cal. I watched Jared Goff's freshman and sophomore seasons at Cal. Jared Goff and I share a hometown where he is the second best football player born in Novato, California. I was heartbroken when my guy, Fernando, transferred to Indiana. But you know what? I was so happy for him to get into that system, put together a 16-0 run or 15-0 run and win the national championship and somehow the Heisman Trophy. We have the mentioning of Tom Brady. Tom Brady, who got a chance due to injury, in his second year, that could happen to Fernando Mendoza in his rookie season. And what did Brady do when he ascended to the Patriots? He threw for 2,800 yards in 15 games and had an 18-12 touchdown to interception ratio. Not great, Bob. Problem was for him, he was on a team with an historic defense that took them into the playoffs. He finished 11-3 as a starting quarterback in his first season. It took him many, many years to achieve fantasy relevance. In fact, his first 4,000-yard season was when he was 28 years old. His first season without double-digit interceptions was 2007. He threw for 48.06, 50, and only 8 interceptions. So it took him a good 8-9 seasons in the league before he became the Tom Brady that you're trying to elicit. Now, Fernando Mendoza is no Tom Brady. You're talking about the greatest of all time and you're trying to elevate this guy. I'm a Raiders fan too.
And he went 16-0, like the team.
Last thing that
he led a team 16-0, like to a
he was the quarterback that did that under Kurt Signetti. I loved the fact.
Who was
that
the quarterback that did under Bill Belichick? It's just like you could. It's apples to apples at this stage, and it's
Oh my goodness! I know
because Indiana in the transfer portal went and got a group of men to play against boys the whole season. But that I digress. That's a.
I love the fact that you want to stand for your guy, because everybody is attacking your priors. If there's anybody who's in a position to be the biggest Fernando Mendoza fan of all freaking time, Mike, it is me. I'm a Cal fan and a Raiders fan. He started his career at Cal. He was the first round draft pick of my Raiders. There's zero reason for me to have any kind of negative feelings towards Fernando Mendoza, except when I A, watch him play football, and B, look at some of the underlying metrics, including his pressure rate, which is Shedeur Sanders level, if not worse. He is not the guy. It's a weak quarterback class. There was no reason for the Raiders to draft a QB this year. They went and signed Kirk Cousins. We had Kirk Cousins at home and Aiden O'Connell. Have a bad season and draft somebody in 2027 because there are a whole lot of quarterbacks coming out next year. I love Fernando Mendoza. I have zero faith.
Clearly don't love Fernando Mendoza.
No, as a person, I have zero faith he will become Tom Brady in fantasy or Jared Goff in fantasy. He's just not that guy. He's got all the intent. He's a winner. He went to Indiana and he won 16 games in the Heisman Trophy. He's a winner. He's got all those intangibles. It doesn't show up for me.
I guess he's a Raider then.
I guess it just depends on what you're looking at then.
All right.
It does.
Let's move on.
Like
we talked about him for like 20 minutes and we got to get going. All right. So I'm fading Jalen Hurts, and it's simple because I just don't think he's going to get back to that dual threat production of 2024. I'm looking at the current cost, QB6 right now, and what they did in their draft capital. They brought in Mekhi Lemon, Eli Stowers, and it clearly signals that offense is shifting towards an intermediate middle of the field throwing. They're going to have a bigger pace. And what made Jalen Hurts so effective in the years was, those design runs, all the running. And I just think that Saquon's backfield is back to him. I'm really high on him this year. And I think the Eagles are going to lean on him and then use that middle of the field. And I don't think that Jalen Hurts is really that great at that type of game. And, he's shown that in the past. They're going to try and push that towards him. And I think that if they're going to take that running upside away from him, and I don't think that's going to get back to the volume that he was in 2024 and 2025, I see all these guys in that clump. Like we mentioned, those year three guys. I see Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, a couple of these other guys that I really like ahead of Hurts in this range. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert are my flag plants this year. So, I mean, for me to take Hurts, in the top 6, I'm fading them at the cost because I just don't think that rushing upside is going to be there this year. Jeff, what do you think?
I've got him at QB 8, so he is near the top of my second tier, and I'm at the same as our consensus over at Footballguys there. I mean, last year he was QB 7 behind a mediocre offensive line and with a terrible play caller. And I think both of those situations will be better, at least for 2026. I mean, if Sean Mannion is very successful in revitalizing this offense, he will probably be a head coach in 2027, and then we will see what happens in Philadelphia. My biggest concern, I think, is something you said. I mean, this team runs a lot, and if it's successful running the ball, that will limit Hurts' passing volume, and it might limit his rushing ability. Now, he still is basically the goal line back, and I think that will continue. So I expect his rushing touchdowns to return. Last year, I think, if I remember right, was the first since his rookie year that he did not have double-digit rushing touchdowns. So if someone who's got the internet's up, check me on that one. So we may not get back to like prime push-tush levels, But I think around 8 or 9 is about right from a dynasty standpoint. But if his cost is around 6, I do think that's just a slightly bit hot. There's a couple other guys I'd rather have.
Yeah. Anybody high on Hurts this year? Like, does anybody think that he's going to have a huge bounce back, Chev?
QB8's the floor. QB2's the ceiling.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
We're sitting on Jalen Hurts. I mean, so you think they're going to be rushing quite a bit this year then?
Well, I mean, again, they ran a lot last year. It just didn't work as well because the offensive line was hurt.
Was hurt, yeah.
Yeah. If they're healthy and he runs, which if you look at the practice reports for the last, couple of days, Sean Mannion has been very forward about the design runs for Jalen Hurts and incorporating that back into the offense. If he's you draft him at QB8, he finishes at QB8. It's not going to be sexy. It's not going to be the outcome that, feels whatever. But now at this point, you're getting him as your second. You can get him as your second quarterback if you go hero quarterback in a super flex league. And I'm going to be good with that all day long. And if we just get a little look from a touchdown perspective, if he gets back to double-digit touchdowns, or if he starts throwing the ball a little bit more, which, apparently people just forgot that he can throw forward passes, even though he doesn't do it in a prolific manner, and it's the rushing production. I think that it's one of the safest picks with high upside that you can make, but it also, for some reason, people just act like it's just not that he's just not good, and he's not good for fantasy. It just wasn't good last year, and he was QB8.
He's been QB8 the last 2 years in a row, so I feel like I agree with the fact that QB8 is his floor. If you look at the last, it's interesting to me, Mike, that in your graphic you didn't include his rushing stats because he had a really precipitous drop-off. Over 150 rushing attempts the previous 3 years, dropped down to 105 last year. His touchdowns were cut in half pretty much, 15, 14, and then 8 last year. And he still had the same finish as the prior year, but he threw the ball a lot more. So I think the idea that Jalen Hurts is not going to be prolific throwing the ball is not quite accurate. He saw more attempts than he did the year before. He didn't reach the 538 from the previous season to that. I feel like if they have an offensive coordinator and an environment where he is able to do both of those things at the level that we've seen him do, maybe independently of each other, he definitely could clear his QB8 standing.
That's fair.
Yeah, I just think Jalen Hurts has a bit of the ick right now with the fight between AJ Brown and Sirianni is in question of a head coach. It's ever-changing revolving door of OCs. Like, I think there is something to it that maybe he isn't the best passer, and now he has to throw over the short to intermediate in the middle of the field. Like, that might not be his strength, but he's going to have to get used to it. It seems like Mannion really wants that. There were rumors, so I think you have to take this with a grain of salt, seeing it on Twitter, is the offensive line is kind of starting to age and getting tired of doing the tush push. Like, Jason Kelsey has come out and talked about that. Like, that beats the crap out of the offensive line, which I think can take away from Jalen Hurts' ceiling. But I think there's an overreaction from the community overall on Jalen Hurts. Like, it's not prospect fatigue, but it just seems like, okay, we're done with this guy. We're not gonna play with him anymore. There's other quarterback options, but I think he still puts up numbers for your fantasy teams.
I think I'm the only one that's been fading him. Like, I see a lot of people like really pumping his tires because of where his price is. And I look at where Philly's headed, and I saw what they added in the intermediate routes, and they're trying to get him to throw up the middle, which is in his wheelhouse. So I'm like you take what he wants to do out of his game, and I think it's a different quarterback. So yeah, that's my concern, and I will continue that, and I'm going to be cautious drafting him. That's
a valid concern. I see him ranked as QB9, and he has 2 QB8 finishes. So I feel like most people are totally on board with you. But if I'm drafting at QB8, QB9, I wouldn't have a problem taking him.
He's my QB2. I love that. Like, what a great anchor that would be. But yeah, all right, Jaxson, Dart, Chev. I think we've already talked quite a bit about my guy, so let's talk about Biggs's guy and see how he feels
Okay.
Jaxson.
So we had 9 rushing touchdowns. That very clearly is going to be an outlier unless they're going to come up with their own version of the tush push. We have the questions about the pocket and him being effective from the pocket. But the biggest thing that nobody's talking about is there's an actual member of Al Cocha, the terrorist organization, calling plays, and his second in command is senior assistant Greg Roman, who does not scheme up or do anything useful when it comes to passing production. And if you're reading the camp reports, it's been a really, really piss poor time with them developing consistency as an offense. So they have the offensive line. You know that John Harbaugh, baby khakis, even though he's the older brother, is going to run the piss out of the football. And I listened to you guys. We all talked about Malik Neighbors, and then basically the who's who. It's the old guy bucket list trip with Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson from the movie, with all the old receivers that they have there right now. And I just don't know, with Matt Al-Naguib calling plays for the Giants in 2026, I don't know that we're going to be able to get a ceiling outcome. Now, if they somehow overhaul their offensive play calling staff, then I'd be in on Jaxson Dart. I can't bring myself to predict a ceiling outcome with Matt Nagy, who nerfed Patrick Mahomes, in addition to absolutely ruining Mitch Trubisky's career. I can't predict a ceiling outcome from him. Now, what we will get is him running the ball quite a bit, but also we've seen that not work out really well for Jaxson Dart in terms of his health and ability to stay on the field. So that's my issue, and I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are, because I want to be in on Jaxson Dart. Biggs was very sharp and astute in talking about the rushing upside and the Konami code that he represents. But also now they jumped the shark and hired the wrong offensive coordinator, and there's nothing that could hamper a premium offensive environment with weapons that we like at every single turn: tight end, quarterback, running back, offensive lines in place. But you just got to have a guy who doesn't hold his crayon with his whole fist calling plays, and they've got 2 of them.
That's my
I'm gonna invoke Bo Hardigree again. I don't disagree with anything that you just said.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and you're just kind of probably putting your bet on the talent and that you believe in your guy. Really, I mean, similar to how I feel about Mendoza. So love it. All right. Next up here is
Jeff is not. I want to hear.
Jeff, what do you?
Something briefly on him. I mean, I've said quite a bit about him closer to the top of the show, but I've got him as my QB 13, which is the top of my tier 3, and I'm not really comfortable with that. But there isn't anyone behind him that I feel strongly enough about to move ahead of him. We got that's Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, Tyler Shuck, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Fernando Mendoza, and Cam Ward are the guys behind him. And at this moment, I'm not really willing to put any of those guys ahead of him. So he's kind of QB 13 because somebody had to be. And he does have top 5 upside when all these things are lined up and working. And I do think that it will be a one-and-done play calling regime, and we'll get somebody in there that can actually make this offense work. Now, Nagy has come through before. You can stumble into it, crayons ablaze. But I'm with you, Chev. I'm not optimistic about that right now with this team. But I'm fine with fading him, certainly.
All right. Well, Biggs, let's get into your fade, because it'll probably be a great segue into Mad Dog's breakout. So let's talk about Bo Nix.
I don't have a lot to say about Bo Nix. One of the things with Bo Nix coming out, or at least as he finished in his rookie season in 2024, just like with Jaxson Dart, love the upside of the rushing ability. And just like Jaxson Dart, He's got limited deep ball success, vulnerable under pressure. Basically, he's a game managing quarterback that likes to scoot a little bit. A lot of turnover worthy plays his first couple of seasons. Hopefully, he can clean that up. But when I look at him and where he's ranked in Dynasty Superflex, he's right behind Trevor Lawrence and Jaxson Dart. I'm absolutely smashing both of those guys over Bo Nix. He's behind, like Brock Purdy's right behind him. Jordan Love's right behind him. Cam Ward's behind him. Jared Goff is behind him. Somebody that we'll talk about a little bit later is behind him when we get to Jeff. I would rather take those guys, get a high-level wide receiver, running back, and wait further on quarterback, get those guys instead of Bo Nix. Just don't have a lot of faith in him, especially at his value. And that's pretty simple.
Jeff?
Well, Nix is my QB 12, the bottom of tier 2, and I'm one spot behind our consensus, which is QB 11. I'm going to say the same thing I just said, because he's 12, because there's nobody right behind him that I feel comfortable putting ahead of him.
Right.
That would be Dart, Love, Prescott, Stroud, Shuck, Mayfield, Goff, Mendoza, Ward, those guys I just mentioned. Denver was the pass happiest team in the league last year. Surely that won't happen again, but they did just add Jalen Waddle. They've got Cortland Sutton. And he is playing for a coach who did turn Drew Brees into a Hall of Famer and Super Bowl champion. I'm with you. I do want to fade him. There isn't anywhere for me to fade him to at the moment. So 12 is where he is. I know Big's argument that you could put Dart ahead of him, sure, but then that's that.
And when you list it off to go, when you listed off those names, when you were talking about Dart, and you have Dart and Nix right there neck and neck with each other, I did note a few of the names that I would rather have. So but that's quibbling, and
yeah, love it. All right. Well, wait a second. We got to get into our breakout.
Who's fading Trevor Lawrence?
No one is. It's a breakout time.
Breakout time, baby.
It's breakout time. And Jeff, talk to us about Tyler Shuck.
So Tyler Shuck's my QB 16, the middle of tier 3. I'm 4 ahead of our Football Guys consensus, which is 20. Shuck was the QB 9 from week 9 on, despite not being used at all in the red zone on an offense that was dead last in the red zone. Their 44% touchdown rate was dead last. They scored just 8 touchdowns from plays run inside the 10-yard line. Their top deep threat was traded away after Shuck had one start. A poor deep completion rate, 25%, minus 12.5% completion percentage over expected. His receivers are wearing ejecto mitts. 4 of his deep balls were dropped, all by Chris Olave. He had no starting center for most of his starts and way too many drive-killing offensive penalties, and he was the QB9 anyway. So that offensive line's returning to health. You have Alvin Kamara, who is now correctly placed in as the RB2 with Travis Etienne's arrival. And they drafted Jordan Tyson, who doesn't figure to help much in the deep game, but he excels on screens, crossers, and comebacks. He's elite against zone. Shuck happens to be highly accurate at short to intermediate distances. So I think he is a mid QB2 with a path, albeit unlikely, to QB1 production, because that would require the offense to get quite a bit better. It's not looking that way so far in camp, but it is early. We're recording this. We're just a week into camp. But I think the Saints offense can get there, can carry him. It just may not be yet. But I still think that this is one of those guys that was looked at coming out of school as being too old and not flashy enough. And yet he's going to end up being, I think, one of the best quarterbacks in the class.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation there in New Orleans, right? I mean, they've got Jordan Tyson, Chris Olave. They're going to be pass happy. We look at what they brought in here, and Travis Etienne, who can really take some of those feeds off the edge as well, which we saw him do quite a bit last year. So I like this take. I think that there's going to be some room for him to improve here and work off of that. He's a guy that is certainly one that the Saints are probably going to have to be invested into for the next couple of years here. So that is an intriguing spot for me. And when you got Olave and Tyson there, I think that's a good combination for some fantasy relevance. Anybody else got a strong take on Shuck?
I was kind of surprised. I was like digging through some things today and came across a heat map of his completion, his success rate throwing the ball in the middle and right of the field, and then also short. And he looks like he's going to be very cromulent. Most of the narrative of him coming out was how old he was, because he had been in college for so long, and he's a 26-year-old quarterback, blah blah blah. But once the draft is over and guys get on the field, age doesn't really matter until you're old anymore. So, maybe he's not going to have a 15-year career starting at age 22, but if he puts together 8 good seasons, I think he's a very competent thrower. 67% completion percentage is pretty dang good. Not a lot of touchdowns. The touchdown interception ratio isn't great, but he's absolutely competent. And if he's got guys who can catch the ball, he's going to be just fine.
Love it. All right. Quarterback Trevor Lawrence is my guy that I think is going to have a huge breakout. He delivered one of the best seasons of his career and still sits below several older, less contested names in Dynasty right now. The gap will close in 2026. I think that late season surge under Liam Cohen was not a fluke. It was the moment everything clicked. And the next man up is simply that version of Trevor Lawrence for a full season. The weapons are still here. The coaching staff is there. And Trevor Lawrence is only 26 years old with a room to grow. And managers treating him as a solid mid-tier QB1, I think, are going to have to reassess their situation after this year. I think he's going to be a locked-in top 5 quarterback. If you look at what he did from weeks 13 through the playoffs, he posted the highest PFF overall grade among all quarterbacks at 92.6, a 7.7% big-time throw rate, one of the lowest turnover-worthy play rates in the league. And look what he did on the ground as well, adding such a dual threat component, especially in the red zone. People look at Trevor Lawrence and they don't think of that rushing upside, but he has some of those traits. He's a big body guy that's not really afraid to take some hits either. So give me Trevor Lawrence. I got him in the top 10 this year, and he's going to have a monster breakout. And I think this is an offense that is built around him for the next man up. And it doesn't matter who's playing on offense. He's going to be ready to rock. Jeff?
100%. I agree. He's my QB9, which is the middle of tier 2. And I think with time we'll move up that. He's got a couple of older guys that are in front of him that I don't want to put him in front of yet. But if we're having the same conversation next year or 2 years from now, he's probably knocking on the door of my top 6 if he continues on the trajectory that he's in. And he may very well do it easily this year because he's got one of the fantasy friendliest schedules for quarterbacks imaginable this year. So this is definitely a year for him to do it. Got all kinds of weapons. Maybe Brian Thomas Jr. is his resurgence. Myers is still there. Parker Washington is still there. Travis Hunter is your situational ace in the hole. You've got, multi-headed running sort of situation. You've got a brilliant head coach now into year 2. So I think we are finally seeing the potential that Jacksonville saw when they drafted him several years ago and just couldn't figure out how to get it out of him. Mm-hmm. And Cohen has.
Love it. Love it. He's got the hair and the fanny. So let's keep it up. All right.
Sunshine.
Next one.
Hair game, something.
All right, Chev, talk about your boy. You're wearing the hat. So it's your time to talk about your breakout.
Yeah, I'm ridiculously excited about everything that we've done to support Cam Ward in the year 2026. And here's the thing. I know not a lot of people want to watch Titans games, and I don't blame you. I mean, it's not a fun thing to do. I had to move him from the big box to one of the small boxes at the bottom so that I didn't run my blood pressure to a point where it would cause me long-term damage.
How did that feel?
Over the course of the last call. It did not feel good, Michael.
Was the wife happy about it though? That
they leave me in the cave on Sundays.
Okay, good, yeah.
So with Cam Ward, you had him playing quite literally the toughest schedule that you could ever play, especially being a number 1 overall pick. You think you're going to get a reprieve. It's the opposite of what happened it's the opposite of what happened with Drake Maye, where Drake Maye just had this wonderfully glorious schedule in 2025, and he had all the tools that we love to see from him. It just blossomed. Well, the opposite took place with Cam Ward. Oh, who do you get your first game of the year? You get the Denver Broncos, who we thought were the best defense in the league, and then you got to play Jacksonville, who was a top 3 turnover unit. Then you got to play the Texans, whose MO is just, hey, I'm going to try to murder somebody on the field today. You got to play them twice. And then you got to play the Seahawks. And you got to play the Rams. So in all of that, he represented himself quite well. We've seen the hilarious failings of some other really high-profile quarterbacks when they played some of these elite defenses. And not only that, he was doing this with 3 day 3 picks as his primary weapons. You know, you had to figure out Chim DK, getting Chim DK involved on the field. Alec Manor for even though, we saw him put 295 yards on Travis Hunter on, Pac-12 After Dark at some point or another, he's still a day 3 rookie. And Gunnar Helm was splitting snaps with Chig Okonkwo. And to borrow Jeff's phrase, they had ejecto glove hands, and they were not doing him any favors throughout the course of the season. And what did he do from weeks 11 to 18? He led the league in touchdown interception ratio. And that's with being tied with Caleb Williams for throwaways. So you have this ridiculous just magician of a player who gets out of the pocket and he's able to create and extend plays, and there's just no one to throw it to. Well, what do you go do? You go pay Wan'Dale Robinson $70 million in free agency to be your slot. You go get Carnell Tate at the 4th pick overall, and you can move him back and forth between X and Z. You get Calvin Ridley to take a pay cut to stay with the team. And Alec Manor took it personally that they took took a receiver in the draft. And now he's been the talk of camp on a consistent basis. So all of this lends me to believe that the arm talent and just the upgrade in situation, Brian Daboll famously led Jaxson Dart down this path, even though it was a little bit more at the rushing. I think Cam Ward is far more developed as a passer, and we're going to see that bear itself out in 2026. I think that there's an outcome where we can go 3,800 to 4,000, and he's going to be well north of 25 touchdowns this year. And for me, I think that this is a QB2 that could start to ascend into those giving you consistent QB1 weeks by throwing multiple touchdowns. And if Carnell Tate hits, this is going to be one of the stacks. On the Twitter X today, I saw a large bellied man dancing on a chair. And I said, that's exactly what I'm going to do the very first time that I see Carnell Tate and Cam Ward connect for a touchdown. So I'm really excited about Cam Ward, and that's why I wanted to talk about him here.
Love it. Jeff, what do you think about Cam Ward?
Well, before Brian Daboll had Jaxson Dart, he had some guy named Josh Allen for 4 seasons up in Buffalo. So I think this guy knows how to get the most out of the quarterbacks that he has, and he built his offensive scheme around him. Chev, I agree with you completely. You hit all of this, but I'm going to say that he will not have another season where his wide receiver 1 barely gets over the 500-yard hurdle. This offense is going to get better. I still have him a little lower probably than you would. I've got him as my QB 21. I need him to show it to me. I've seen it in college. I think he's got it, but I need him to show me a little bit more. He had a brutal schedule last year. He had brutal offensive line, which he still has. He had some not very good coaching. They brought in Wan'Dale Robinson, who you probably did mention. Daboll knows that guy really well too. However, they need to protect him better, man. He was tied for the most sacks last year at 55, and he lost a league high 410 yards to sacks. So that's got to get cleaned up. Some of that's on Ward. A lot of it is just on the offensive line. So he may not have that breakthrough yet, but I'm a lot more willing to put my faith in him than I am folks like Bryce Young and Penix and McCarthy and Willis and any of Cleveland's QBs. And I just have him one spot behind Mendoza. So that tells you he's right in that range. That's both of them have that opportunity to move up the board if they show it to me.
One of the knocks that I had from the eye test was watching him play against Cal. It was Mendoza and Ward head to head. And there was a bad decision made. He threw a really bad interception, and I was like, if he's gonna elevate himself at the NFL level, he needs to not make throws like that. So watching him over the course of his rookie season, the fact that he had a pretty positive touchdown interception ratio kept the interceptions down. That said that he's taking into coaching, he's using his brain a little bit more. And I want to throw out there, he had 39 rushes, so basically call it 40, and 55 sacks. So if you take 540 attempts and you take almost 100 times where he either had to scramble out of the pocket or go down, and you add that to maybe an uptick in his completion percentage, more competent pass catchers, this could be a big second-year jump.
It shall be, I think.
Oh, that little guy, that little pass you said, that's high risk, high reward, man. I think Cam Ward has the skill set. Looking at him, Jeff, what you guys said, watching quarterback, like I thought he was a buy at the end of last season. He is a buy now for me. He has the intangibles. He has the skill set to jump from where he is. He's QB 18 on Dynasty Data Lab, and I think that is a screaming buy right now for Cam Ward.
I took him as my QB2 just recently in our thing, behind Trevor Lawrence and ahead of Daniel Jones.
There you go.
So
settling in nicely here, and I think it's going to be a great year two breakout for Cam Ward. All right, Biggs, talk about a angry Baker Mayfield.
Short and sweet. Watch the quarterback series on Netflix. Baker Mayfield in the first half of the season had, I want to say, 4 top 10 finishes, including games where he had upwards of 28 fantasy points. I shifted to my Cam Ward notes, so I need to bring these back. 28 points, 30 points, 28.92 points, 5 top 10 finishes, and then he got hurt. Mecca Buka is there. Chris Godwin returning to the slot. They brought in Ted Hurst. If Jalen McMillan can't play the X, Ted Hurst is going to do it. There is no Mike Evans, but Baker Mayfield doesn't need Mike Evans to have a big bounce back year. If he stays healthy, that wide receiver core stays healthy, we see Baker Mayfield return to his previous lofty heights.
He's definitely returning from injury. I mean, he was hurt about 75 times last season, there's no questioning his toughness. There's a little bit of contract drama, at least as of the moment that we are recording this. But he was the QB4 of the year before. And while I think that was a bit of an outlier, that does show you what he's capable of. And he still has, I think, QB1 finishes outside of that, even without some of the weapons around him. I do think we've seen his ceiling, but it's a nice ceiling, and it's well up into QB1 territory. I have him at QB 18, kind of at the lower end of QB3. And honestly, it's more age than anything else. He's 31. We're seeing him, in this offense here in Tampa Bay that is shifting around a little bit. And so, I think if he can put together another really strong season and they sign him to a contract that keeps him there and then keep these other weapons in place, I'll probably move him up my board somewhere around mid-season. But right now I've got him at QB 18, which is the same as our Footballguys consensus.
Love it. All right, our last but not least take here, and it's probably going to take about an hour to get through this one because we might have some headbutting here. Bo Nix is now a breakout and not a fade. So
I think this is great. Biggs and I butt heads like the Raiders and the Broncos do in division. So it's always nice to go against Biggs and see a different process and maybe open my eyes to how I'm looking at players here. So Bo Nix came in pro ready. He played 61 games in college, and lots of people thought that was a fault, but I think that made him the perfect quarterback for Sean Payton's complex system. As a rookie, he had 376 completions, almost 4,000 yards, 29 TDs, and he added over 400 yards on the ground. I think Bo Nix is more than just an escape artist. He possesses the mobility to make him a true dual threat quarterback, and we've seen that with back-to-back QB7 finishes. He was first in percentage of dropbacks, resulting in sacks, fumbles, or interceptions at 5.5%. So he led the league in that. So he knows he has the composure to either dirt the ball or escape to the sidelines and get out of harm's way. He now has Jalen Waddle, where I think his skill set, I've talked about this over and over, that it's his strengths in the short to the intermediate areas in the field. So I think Jalen Waddle is only going to make Bo Nix take another step in his game this year.
Jeff?
He's my QB 12, as I said before, in part because there isn't anybody behind him I'd put ahead of him, but that's not necessarily a bad thing here. I do think that Denver may finally get their rushing attack put together with a healthy J.K. Dobbins, with Harvey, and with the other weapons that they have there. So they may not need him to throw as much or run as much as he has in the past. So I've got him at QB 12, which is the very bottom of QB1 range. He can go up a little bit from there. And as I said, he's playing for the guy who made Drew Brees a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those takes where just like they're on, it's like the inflection point, really, you know, like you're kind of seeing it there, and you could be on either way of that. So love the takes tonight, gentlemen. Jeff Blaylock, what a show. You were on fire tonight, and really appreciate you coming on the show. Hour and 15 minutes deep. We had some conversations that obviously got a little bit heated at times, and that's what this is all about. It's, I think, get some clarity for our viewers. Jeff, tell everybody where to find all your stuff and what you're doing for Footballguys right now.
You can find me at Footballguys. I do Dynasty rankings. We'll be doing a Dynasty feature on deep dive waivers this season. You can also find we'll be doing camp reports for the Saints and the Detroit Lions. Got some player spotlights on there, including some of the folks we talked about today, Tyler Shuck and Josh Allen. Although we didn't talk about Josh very much, but he got mentioned. And, of course, my podcast, Dynasty Compass. Please check that out. We are, again, trying to be the teach a man to fish kind of show, teach you how to navigate rather than just point where you go. I think the analogy I like to use is I can get wherever I need to go with a GPS, but I couldn't tell you how I got there or find it again. But if I can get there by navigating with an map and compass, I can find it 1,000 times out of 1,000. And so that's the idea behind Dynasty Compass.
Well, it would be great to have us on that show one of these days. So, you know, we're all open for guesting and stuff like that. So if you need some individual guests, feel free to reach out to us because we'd love to be on your show.
Absolutely. Love to have you guys.
Love it. Jeff Blaylock, the man himself, talking quarterbacks with us on the Dynasty Pulse. Biggs, take us home like you always do so well.
Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. We got a bunch of stuff coming up with Fantasy Sports Advice Network, including the takeover of the Draft Night Out. It's no longer one day at the Fantasy Football Expo where you have to be in Canton and you have to go to the Expo. It is now online this year. We've got 8 divisions. Go to draftnightout.com. Sign up. It's a $22 buy-in. 4 of that goes to charity. Jump in the leagues. Winners of each league through the fantasy season get a ring and then get qualified for a tournament that goes through the Super Bowl. The winner of that is the DNO champion. They get a championship belt, a PlayStation 5, and Madden 27. Again, that's draftnightout.com. And then next year, 2027, we're going to be doing Draft Night Out live events across the country, so you can be a part of that. Also, with your buy-in, your $22 buy-in, you get a free month of Fantasy Sports Advice Network Pro Plus membership. So you can get into the app, Sellout Crowds. You can find your communities. You can talk about the things that you want to talk about and cut out the noise, the other stuff that you don't want to have anything to do with. If you're just football only, jump into those. If you're a specific team, jump into that. There's nothing else but sports and the things that you want to talk about. So all that stuff. Follow us here on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network Hub, all the sports that you want to play in fantasy. Fantasy Sports Advice Network, we help you win.
We hope you win, folks. Thanks a lot, Jeff. We'll see y'all next week. Peace out.